The champagne flute with the tiny chip at the rim has always been mine. It's my quiet way of keeping track of what's in my hand when the room is full and the air smells like praise. Tonight the house hums with low laughter in the courtyard, silver tapping against porcelain. The ocean presses its steady palm against Charleston as if to hush us. My kitchen island carries a small forest of glasses and an even smaller field of white pastries. I'm turning 71, and 2 hours ago I signed the last document that separated me from the company I built after my husband died. $21.8 million says I did something right. But money draws predators as surely as blood and water. I stand near the French doors watching my guests circulate through the garden. The fairy lights strung through the live oaks cast everyone in a gentle glow. These are my people, colleagues and friends gathered to celebrate not just my retirement, but the educational publishing company I built from nothing but grief and determination. The champagne flute with the chip catches the light when I lift it. I've kept this imperfect glass for 20 years, a reminder that flawed things can still serve beautifully. I run my thumb over the tiny imperfection barely noticeable, unless you know to look for it. Like so many things in life. Jessica makes entrances like weather. All gloss, a change in pressure you feel in your bones. My daughter-in-law smiles at me, as if the smile is my gift. Her dress tonight is emerald silk, calculated to make every other woman feel underdressed. The emeralds at her throat match her dress exactly, a birthday gift from James last year that I know for certain cost more than his monthly mortgage. "Martha," she calls across 3 conversations. "You sit. Let me handle guests." And in 15 years of marriage to my son, I've never seen her polish a glass, but here she is, triangular nails flicking away invisible spots, a host so attentive she could be campaigning for sainthood. I watch as she arranges cheese on a platter, her movements precise and camera-ready. I'm talking with my former COO about legacy when I see it. A small amber bottle, the kind you'd use for essential oils or tinctures, pinched between 2 fingers palmed near the champagne. The movement is delicate and practiced. The dropper plumb bob squeezes blooms something clear into the flute with the chip. My flute. My heart slows to a dangerous calm. The kind that used to come over me in board meetings when someone thought I'd be easy to intimidate. Jessica glances left-right, seals, the cap drops the vial into the zip of a designer clutch, and turns her face into a portrait of daughterly concern, just as I reach the table. "Martha," she begins, then catches herself. She calls me Martha when we're being polite, and Sarah when she's imitating intimacy. "Martha, you look a little pale. Sit, please. Celebrate. You earned this." "Did I?" I take the flute she offers me and lift it to eye level. Tiny bubbles stutter like guilty thoughts. I smile the way I used to smile at board members who brought knives to a cake cutting. "To good health," I say. "To fresh beginnings," she purrs, and I almost pity the performance. I don't drink it. I drift. I wasn't always Martha Coleman, founder and CEO of Lighthouse Educational Publishing. For most of my life, I was simply Martha Coleman, the literature teacher at Westside High, who married Edward Coleman, the chemistry teacher down the hall. We were the kind of teachers who stayed late, who knew every student's story, who believed education was the doorway to a better world. After 30 years in the classroom, I transitioned to running the university library. Edward called me the keeper of stories. He was right about that, as he was about so many things. My skin color meant I had to work twice as hard to reach half as far. The first black department head at the library, I carried that weight with quiet dignity. Edward understood. As a black man in the sciences, he too knew what it meant to be exceptional, just to be considered acceptable. We found strength in each other's ambitions, in our shared belief that knowledge could transform lives. Our small Charleston house became a sanctuary of books and dreams. Every wall lined with shelves Edward built by hand. Students would come for dinner for advice, for a glimpse of what was possible. Our table often crowded with young people hungry for more than food. That was our first form of publishing, feeding minds around a dining table worn smooth by eager elbows. When cancer took Edward, it took him quickly. Too quickly for goodbyes, too quickly for plans. What it didn't take was the house we'd restored together, a historic Charleston single with a wraparound porch and a garden I could lose myself in for hours. Edward had insisted on an insurance policy that paid off our mortgage. "Just in case," he'd said with that half-smile that meant he was protecting me from his fears. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped appearing on my porch, after colleagues stopped checking in, I found myself alone with grief and purpose. Edward and I had always talked about writing better textbooks, ones that engaged students rather than numbed them. With my library background and his notes on chemistry education, I started small. One workbook for high school literature, then another for chemistry using Edward's methodology. The nights were the hardest, sitting at our old dining table, red pen in hand, marking manuscripts the way I'd once marked student essays. Sometimes in the silence between page turns, I'd hear Edward's voice suggesting a clearer explanation, a better example. I'd talk back to him, arguing points as if he were still across the table from me. Perhaps that's why my books seemed to speak directly to readers. They were born of conversation with a ghost. 5 years later, Lighthouse Educational Publishing had 30 employees and contracts with school districts in 3 states. 10 years later, we were national. The money came as a surprise. Educators don't expect to become wealthy, but quality educational materials were in demand, and I had built a company that delivered them with integrity. I poured the profits back into scholarships, into library funding, into the community that had given me and Edward our chance. But I also began to restore our house the way Edward had always dreamed. The garden especially became my canvas, each plant chosen with purpose, roses for beauty, herbs for cooking, and yes, the traditional Charleston plantings, including oleander for their historical significance. Edward's botany books guided my choices. His chemistry knowledge made me respectful of what beauty could conceal. James, our only child, never showed interest in the business. He preferred drawing buildings to writing about them. He became an architect, married Jessica, and settled 3 miles from my house. Close enough for Sunday dinners, but far enough for independence. I paid for their wedding, helped with the down payment on their house in West Ashley-covered summer camp for my granddaughter Lily. Financial cushions that I called love and they called normal. $180,000, give or take. I never kept count. That's what family does. Now, standing in my garden surrounded by the people who've witnessed my journey, I should feel nothing but satisfaction. Instead, I feel the weight of the poisoned glass in my hand and the knowledge that family can be the most dangerous wilderness of all. I compliment a neighbor's linen dress. I adjust a candle wick. Then I pass behind Catherine Jessica's mother, my age, a woman who still sends handwritten notes, and set my flute down next to her purse while I lift a napkin from the tray. I trade my glass for hers in the act of reaching. It's a move I learned playing bridge with mean old women who taught me that the hand you show isn't always the one that wins. The garden smells of jasmine and salt air. The bougainvillea I planted the year after Edward died now climbs 20 feet up the back wall, violent pink against white stucco. My roses, carefully tended, nod their heavy heads in the evening breeze. And along the back fence, the oleander stands, Sentinel, a Charleston staple. Pretty poisonous, drought-proof. The kind of thing polite people cultivate because it behaves. Every inch of it can kill you. I watch Jessica float through my house, touching surfaces as if taking inventory. She has the curious habit of adjusting picture frames whenever she visits, tiny shifts that say more than words. James follows in her wake, handsome at 45, his father's height with my caution. Tonight he seems distracted, his smile not quite reaching his eyes when guests congratulate him on his latest architectural project. I know the signs of trouble. I've seen their credit card declined at dinner. Noticed Jessica returning dresses with tags still attached after wearing them to events. Heard James's careful deflections when asked about his firm's new projects. Something is happening in their carefully curated life, something that smells like desperation. 10 minutes after I switch the glasses, Catherine is telling someone that the champagne tastes interesting, the way people say bold when a perfume is too loud. 3 minutes after that, she folds like a dropped marionette, crystal shattering against marble, and then a sound comes from her that does not belong to a party. Foam freckles her lips as her heels hammer the tile. I am kneeling, 2 fingers to her pulse, while Jessica's scream tears the room into string. "Call 911, she wails. "Mom! Mom!" She is beautiful in panic the way actresses are beautiful in rain. James shoves through, body's eyes white around the edges. He looks at Jessica for exactly the length of time it takes to verify a story he already knows. "What happened?" he demands of the air of anyone who will answer what he doesn't want asked. She just collapsed," Jessica gasps. "She was fine." Her hand flutters. I have seen this flutter when a server forgets the lemon for her water. The paramedics arrive in a golden rush of competence. They say words like tacky and airway and possible ingestion. Jessica performs grief as if she loves an audience. I watch her feet. People who are afraid forget how to stand. People who are pretending remember to pose. "Which hospital?" I ask as they load Catherine. "Roper St. Francis," one of them replies. "Family." "Close friend," I say, and tilt my head toward Jessica, who is busy hyperventilating into a monogrammed napkin. "I'll follow in my car." "Mom, no, you should stay," James begins. He remembers too late that I don't do should. The ER is cold enough to preserve meat. I've always thought hospitals take the temperature down so fear can shiver and blame the air. I sit within earshot of the nurse's station. Words drift like gulls. Alkaloids, plant-derived, cardiac irritant. The nurses move with efficiency, but their eyes linger on me a beat longer than necessary. I've grown accustomed to this in Charleston. The polite surprise when a black woman speaks with authority occupies space without apology. Tonight, I don't have time for their assumptions. I'm hunting for information. Catherine is stable but sedated. We'll keep her overnight, the doctor tells Jessica, who nods as if she arranged it. "I can't understand it," she says to me on loop voice pitched for sympathy. "Mom has been so healthy. She barely takes anything. Maybe it was food." Champagne disagrees with me sometimes. I offer, watching her pupils pinprick. Metallic, bitter. Strange how a good bottle can turn. Champagne. She stumbles over the word, recovers. No, the doctor said it wasn't anything like that." Of course the doctor did not say that. Doctors say, "We don't know yet," until they do. James sits rigid, phone face down on his knee. I raised him to make eye contact with problems. He's looking at anything else. A generation of men learned to outsource difficulty to women whose spines they mistook for furniture. I taught mine better. I thought I did. By the time the nurse tells us Catherine will sleep, now it is past midnight. Outside, humidity drapes the parking lot like a wet sheet. James walks me to my car, performing beautiful sun. "Maybe stay with us tonight, Mom. After that, we'll take care of everything." How careful. Keep me in their house, under their roof, on their timetable, while they look for whatever went wrong with their plan. "That's sweet," I say, and unlock the door. But I like my own pillow. At home, I do what I've done for 45 years when something smells wrong. I make coffee, and I list what I know. The legal pad fills itself with facts. James is firm. The last 3 projects stalled. His last celebratory dinner with me charged on a card for the points. Jessica's styling business. A website with stunning photography and thin testimonials. Invoices paid late. A habit of returning dresses unworn. The West Ashley house refinanced twice. HELOC rumor via a neighbor who sees everything. I turn to a fresh page and write dates. When did things begin to shift? 6 months ago. James stopped bringing business associates to dinner. 4 months ago, Jessica began commenting on how unnecessarily large my house was for one person. 2 months ago, they asked if I'd considered downsizing to something more manageable. Last month, James inquired about my will, as if the thought had just occurred to him. The pattern emerges like a photograph in developing fluid. Slow at first, then all at once undeniable. The cars in their driveway leased. My gifts. Down payment help. Summer camp for Lily. Sprung tuition. Generous spackle smeared over bad planning. $180,000 give or take. I called it love. They called it normal. I get up long before dawn and walk the garden that Edward planted when hope was still a physical thing we watered. The oleander along the back fence glows ghost white in the half-light. I touch a leaf and remember the botany book Edward kept in our bedroom. The warnings it contained. Charleston gardens are beautiful and deadly if you know what to look for. Edward had been fascinated by the duality of plants. Nature doesn't make moral judgments, he used to say. The same compound that kills in one dose heals in another. He'd taught chemistry with these paradoxes, making students think beyond simple categories of safe and dangerous. The kitchen still smells faintly of pastries and champagne. The open bottle sits on the counter, proud as a trophy. I tape a note to it, "Do not discard." Whatever touched Catherine's tongue is still here. At 7:30, my phone rings. "Martha." Jessica's voice has been tuned to concern. "I didn't sleep. I was so worried about you. You didn't feel off at all last night, did you?" "Not a bit. How is Catherine home?" "The doctor said it was just a, reaction. Probably something she ate earlier. We'll keep her quiet a few days. No visitors." How tidy. "Tell her I'm thinking of her," I say, and end the call. At 9, James arrives with a box of pastries from Harker's, the almond croissants I love, when apologies are being made. He kisses my temple. "You okay?" I am. He sits nervous in that soft way that once charmed kindergarten teachers. "Mom, Jess, and I were talking. We worry about you. Big house alone late nights. What if last night had been you?" He says it like he invented the thought. He reaches into his bag and produces a glossy folder. "There's a place we've been researching. Palmetto Haven. It's like a resort. Safety, amenities, a community. It's 20 minutes from us." How thoughtful. I let the brochure lie there. Faces of beautiful seniors kayaking into sunsets. I notice that in the photos, the smiling seniors are all white. Typical Charleston marketing, the subtle exclusivity beneath the southern charm. I wonder if James even noticed. "What an entrance fee," I murmur, noting the figure $420,000. "It covers everything," he rushes. "And they require a power of attorney on file. Just a precaution. We can handle paperwork. We're a team." We were a team when he was 10 and sold me lemonade for $2 because he'd added strawberries in a story. He knows how to wrap need and care. "I'll think," I tell him, and I watch the relief loosen his mouth. He expects a yes, the way a gambler expects the next hand to be kind. When he leaves, I call my attorney, Victor. "I need you," I say. "Martha." He answers alert through morning throat. "When?" "Now." By noon, I am in Victor's paneled office, looking out over a city that looks like lace from this high up. I tell him everything. The vial, the swap, the fall, the words in the ER, the brochure on my table, the requirement for a broad legal leash called care. Victor listens as if listening were a profession in itself. 75 years old, bow tie impeccable, he's been my attorney since I incorporated Lighthouse. He believed in me when the banks didn't. Now he believes me when my own son doesn't. When I first walked into his office 20 years ago, I was just a teacher with an idea. The other law firms had shown me their junior associates, young white men who smiled too much and listened too little. Victor, already established and respected, had taken the meeting himself. "Ideas interest me," he'd said, "especially from people who understand value." He'd been one of the first black attorneys in Charleston to break into corporate law. He understood what it meant to build something that wasn't expected to exist. "You're sure you saw her doctor the glass?" "I'm sure," I say, and in my mouth it tastes like iron. "And I'm reasonably sure she used oleander." His eyebrows lift by a precise millimeter. "Common, lethal. Hard to trace if you don't know to look." We sit in silence for a moment, two people considering the weight of attempted murder in a family. "We will document everything," Martha, Victor says finally. "First, a competency assessment by someone they don't know and can't buy. Second, a trust structure that punishes interference. Third, medical directives that name who you trust and who you don't." "And the rest?" I ask. "The rest," he says, "is theater. You will nod where they expect you to nod, and when they reach, they will grab smoke." In the parking garage, the air tastes like pennies. I sit in my car with my hands on the wheel and allow myself 1 minute to feel the smallness that tries to creep in when your child looks at you like an account. Then I start the engine. I've been underestimated by friendlier faces for longer years. On my way home, I stop by Mrs. Tilda Ray's porch, our retired ER nurse with a voice like a paring knife. I bring her a bag of biscuits and ask if it were a puzzle in the Sunday paper, if champagne ever tasted metallic, what would she think? She doesn't blink. "Oleander," she says. "Old city trick. Pretty shrub ugly exit." Tilda and I go back to my early days in Charleston. Another black woman who carved her space in a profession that didn't expect her. She'd been head nurse in the ER for 30 years, seen everything from garden poisonings to hurricane casualties. Nothing surprises her anymore. That's why I trust her judgment. "Thank you," I say. "For what?" She smiles. "I just like a woman who solves her own problems." Back in my kitchen, I label the champagne bottle and call a private lab Tilda recommended. They'll pick it up. They'll test quietly. I stand at the window while the courier drives away, and the oleander in my yard nods in the salt wind, like it knows a secret I've already learned. You survive this world by noticing which glass is yours and by knowing when to put it down. The lab report arrives in a plain envelope tucked between a grocery flyer and an alumni magazine. I slide it open at the kitchen counter, the paper trembling in my hand. One line is enough. Positive for concentrated oleandrin alkaloid. I fold it carefully as though gentleness could tame the words and slide it into a leather folio beside my will. Proof. My suspicions weren't paranoia. They were science. Someone had tried to kill me with poison plucked from a garden hedge. The report includes details about concentration levels far higher than would occur naturally. This wasn't someone brewing oleander tea by mistake. This was extraction and concentration, requiring knowledge and intent. I think of Jessica's casual mentions of her herbal wellness phase last year, her sudden interest in natural remedies and essential oil diffusers. Had she been practicing all this time? That night I sleep with the lamp on, not out of fear, but out of calculation. My mind works like it used to during contract negotiations, weighing silence against exposure. Confront them too soon, and they'd retreat. Deny, regroup. Wait too long, and they might refine their plan. What I need is leverage. Knowledge they don't know I hold. A position from which to steer their moves. At dawn, with coffee warming my hands, I make another list. This time, not of their debts, but of their patterns. James is a man who wants to be good, but likes comfort more than integrity. He can be persuaded to betray by wrapping betrayal in duty. Jessica is different. Her love language is acquisition. Dresses, cars, houses she can't afford, but needs to project the life she wants the world to believe she has. Both dangerous, but in different ways. The phone rings just after 7. Jessica's voice syrupy and deliberate. "Martha, I've been so worried. You didn't feel unwell at all yesterday, did you?" Her choice of words is almost comical. Yesterday. Not at the party. Not when her mother collapsed. She's probing for the answer to one question. Did her poison find its mark? "Not at all, dear," I say, stirring sugar into my coffee. "I've always had a strong stomach." A pause. Then she rattles on, trying to sound casual. "The doctors think maybe Mom just mixed something with her vitamins. You know how scatterbrained she can be." Scatterbrained Catherine, who alphabetizes her spice rack and synchronizes her pill boxes with her iPhone alarms. I almost laugh. "That's a relief," I murmur. For a moment I worried it might have been something at the party. Imagine if it had been the champagne. Her breath catches. It's small, but it's there. No, nothing like that," she says too quickly. "The doctors were very clear, definitely not food or drink." Interesting, since the doctors had said no such thing. Later that morning, James appears at my door with a pink box of pastries, his eyes red as though he hadn't slept. He tries to play the role of the beautiful son, but his movements betray him. His hand shakes as he sets out the almond croissants I love, as though even his guilt can't suppress habit. "How are you holding up, Mom?" he asks, lowering himself into a chair. "Better than some," I say dryly. He flinches, then smooths it over with a smile. "Jess and we've been thinking about you. This big house all alone, it's too much after what happened last night." He leans forward, earnest, almost pleading. "What if it had been you? What if no one had found you in time?" There it is, the script. He slides a glossy brochure across the table. Palmetto Haven. Pictures of seniors kayaking, laughing over wine-painting sunsets. Jessica's perfume clings to the pages. "It's not a nursing home, Mom. It's a lifestyle. Safety community medical staff on site, just 20 minutes from us." "And the cost?" I ask. His eyes flicker. "An entrance fee. About $420,000. But it covers everything. Housing meals, lifetime care. He hesitates. And the paperwork. Just standard things. They need a power of attorney on file. Someone to handle your affairs if you couldn't. If I couldn't. I sip my coffee and look at him. Really look. He's still the boy who used to bring me dandelions. Still the teenager who'd once cried over a broken science fair project. But layered over that boy is a man with debts in his pockets and a wife whispering poison into his ear. I'll think about it. I say, smiling the way I used to when I knew a negotiation was already mine. When he leaves, I lock the brochure in my desk and call Victor. Prepare the documents, I tell him. He doesn't ask which ones. The ER waiting room at Roper St. Francis Hospital has the particular silence of people trying not to imagine the worst. I sit with my purse on my lap watching the fluorescent lights buzz above like trapped insects. 3 days have passed since Catherine collapsed at my party, and Jessica's story has shifted with each telling food allergies and unexpected medication, interaction, low blood sugar. The truth remains sealed in the champagne bottle in my refrigerator, waiting like evidence. I've come to check on Catherine against Jessica's wishes. She's been remarkably insistent that her mother needs rest and isn't taking visitors. Too insistent. The kind of insistence that grows from fear rather than concern. The nurse at the station recognizes me from the night Catherine was admitted. Her name tag reads Beverly Johnson. She's about my age with salt and pepper twists pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. When she looks up, I see recognition in her eyes, not just of me, but of my situation. Black women in Charleston develop a second sight about certain things. Danger, deception, the quiet violence hiding behind polite smiles. "Mrs. Coleman," she says, voice low. "You're here for Catherine Mills." "Yes, how is she?" Beverly's eyes flick down the hall, then back to me. "She's stabilized. But there are some concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that make the doctors run extra tests." She leans forward slightly. "The kind that make them use words like toxicology and alkaloid poisoning." My pulse quickens. So they've identified it. I keep my voice steady. "May I see her, just for a moment?" Beverly hesitates, then nods. "Room 342. Her daughter stepped out for coffee. You might have about 10 minutes. I thank her with a nod that carries more meaning than words could. The solidarity of women who understand the need for information for truth, even when others try to bury it. Catherine lies against white sheets, looking smaller than I remember. Her usually perfect silver bob lies flat against the pillow. The monitors beside her bed beep with reassuring regularity. Her eyes flutter open when I approach. "Martha," she whispers, voice rough from the intubation they'd performed the night she arrived. "What are you doing here?" I take her hand. Her skin feels like tissue paper over bone. "I needed to see you were all right." "Jessica said, no visitors." "Yes, she mentioned that." I sit in the chair beside her bed. "Catherine, what did the doctors say happened to you?" She frowns, confusion crossing her face. "Something about a plant toxin, poisoning. But that can't be right. Who would—" Her voice trails off, and I see the moment the question forms in her mind, the possibility too terrible to speak aloud. "I don't know." I lie because the truth would crush her. "But I'm going to find out." Her fingers tighten around mine. "The champagne," she says suddenly. "It tasted wrong, bitter, almost metallic." I nod, committing her words to memory. "Rest now. I'll come again when I can." As I stand to leave, Catherine catches my sleeve. "Martha, be careful. Jessica has been—" "Strange. Controlling. Ever since the collapse." Before I can respond, I hear the click of heels in the hallway. I squeeze Catherine's hand once more and slip out the side door of her room, avoiding the main corridor where Jessica would be returning with her coffee. In the elevator down, I meet Beverly again. She holds a clipboard against her chest, like armor. "Mrs. Coleman, before you go." She glances around to make sure we're alone. "The doctors found something unusual in Mrs. Mills' blood work. A compound called oleandrin. It's from oleander. I finish for her. I know it. I have some growing in my garden. Beverly's gaze sharpens. It's extremely toxic. This wasn't accidental exposure. No, I say quietly. I don't believe it was. The police have been notified, she continues, but they're moving slowly. Mrs. Mill's daughter has been persuasive about alternative explanations. Of course she has. Jessica has always been skilled at making people doubt what they know to be true. A gaslighter wrapped in Chanel. Thank you for telling me, I say. Beverly reaches into her pocket and hands me a card. My number, if you need anything or notice anything concerning. I slip the card into my purse. Another ally, unexpected but welcome. As I walk through the parking garage, my phone buzzes with a text from Jessica. Where are you? We need to talk about Palmetto Haven. Coming to your house now. I text back a simple okay and start my car. The game has begun. Jessica's silver Mercedes sits in my driveway when I arrive, gleaming like a threat. I park beside it and take a moment to compose myself. The lab report confirming oleandrin in the champagne is safely locked in my desk. The bottle itself is hidden behind jars of homemade preserves in the refrigerator. Evidence secured, I enter my own home as if walking onto a battlefield. Jessica sits at my kitchen island scrolling through her phone. She's dressed in cream linen that probably cost more than a month of my teacher's salary from years ago. She looks up with practiced concern. Martha, where have you been? I've been worried. Just errands, I say lightly, setting my purse on the counter. What's this about Palmetto Haven? She brightens, sliding a folder across the island. We've secured you a spot, the Magnolia Suite overlooking the gardens. It's the most exclusive unit they have, and they hardly ever have openings. James had to pull some strings with a client who's on their board. I examine the glossy brochure inside photos of spacious apartments and smiling seniors engaged in watercolor classes and Tai Chi. All white faces, of course. I wonder if Jessica even notices that detail. It looks lovely, I lie. When would this be? That's the exciting part. She leans forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They've had a cancellation. We could move you in next week if we expedite the paperwork. Next week, so the timeline accelerates. Whatever financial pressure James and Jessica are under must be intensifying. That's very soon, I say carefully. I'd need to make arrangements for the house, my belongings. Oh, we'll take care of everything. Jessica waves her hand dismissively. James has already contacted movers. We'd just store most things since the apartment, while Beautiful doesn't have room for all this. Her gesture encompasses my home, my life, my history. And the cost? I ask, though I already know. The entrance fee is substantial, she admits. $420,000, but it covers everything for life. And with what you just got from the company sale, it's nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. Just 20% of my liquid assets. Just the price of my freedom. I see. And the paperwork you mentioned before, the power of attorney. Jessica's smile doesn't flicker, but her eyes sharpen. Just standard forms. You know how these places are liability concerns. James has already drawn everything up. He'll bring it over tonight for you to sign, and then we can handle everything else. That's very efficient of you both. We just want what's best for you, Martha. She reaches across to pat my hand. After what happened to Mom, we've been so worried. What if something like that happened to you all alone in this big house? Who would help? The threat isn't even veiled anymore. What happened to Catherine wasn't an accident, and Jessica wants me to know it wasn't. A warning dressed in concern. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. I say, matching her performance with one of my own. Let me look over everything tonight. I'm sure it will all be fine. Jessica's smile widens with victory. She thinks I've surrendered. Perfect. James will come by around 7 with the final papers. We're so excited for you, Martha. This is going to be wonderful. After she leaves, I sit in the stillness of my kitchen, listening to the tick of the clock Edward repaired 20 years ago. Then I make 3 calls. First to Victor. They're pushing for next week. Prepare everything we discussed. Second to Tilda Ray. I need your expertise on something. Can I come by this afternoon? Third to the detective whose card Beverly slipped me. This is Martha Coleman. I believe I have information about an attempted murder. By 3 o'clock, I'm sitting on Tilda's screened porch with a glass of sweet tea, watching hummingbirds dart between feeders. Tilda's garden is famously medicinal herbs for healing, plants for poultices, flowers for teas, and like many gardens in Charleston, she too has oleander along the back fence. You were right, I tell her, sliding the lab report across the wicker table. Concentrated oleandrin in the champagne. Tilda reads the report with the practiced eye of someone who's seen toxicology results before. This concentration would have been fatal, no question. Catherine mentioned a metallic bitter taste before she collapsed. Tilda nods. That's the oleandrin. Most people wouldn't recognize it, but it's distinctive. Whoever prepared this knew what they were doing. This isn't amateur work. Could Jessica have learned this online? I ask. She's been into natural wellness lately. Possibly, but extraction and concentration at these levels, that takes equipment knowledge. Tilda frowns. Has she ever shown interest in chemistry, botany? A memory surfaces. James mentioning Jessica taking night classes at the community college last year. Something about expanding her horizons. I'd thought it was for her styling business. What if it had been for this? She might have, I admit. I need to know more about how this works, Tilda. If the police investigate, when not if, Tilda corrects me firmly. When they investigate, I need to understand exactly what happened. Tilda sets down her tea and leans forward. Martha, listen to me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Extracting oleandrin requires planning, equipment, time. This was premeditated, calculated. If your daughter-in-law did this, she's been planning it for months. The weight of this settles on my shoulders. Not a desperate act, but a carefully orchestrated plot. And if Jessica had been planning this for months, what else might she have prepared? I need to protect myself, I say quietly. Yes, you do. Tilda reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small digital device. This is a voice recorder, tiny, nearly invisible. I used to keep one for difficult patient interactions in the ER. I take the recorder, feeling its weight in my palm. You think I should record them? I think, Tilda says carefully, that people who poison champagne rarely stop at one attempt. And if I were you, I wouldn't eat or drink anything they offer you from now on. Par Cruz arrives at my home at 4:30, precisely on time as always. In her pressed gray suit and sensible shoes, she looks more like an accountant than a private investigator, which is exactly why she's so effective. People tell her things because they don't perceive her as a threat. We sit in my study where the afternoon light filters through stained glass that Edward and I salvaged from an old church being demolished. The colored light falls across Par's face as she opens her laptop. It's worse than I thought, Martha, she begins without preamble. Your son and daughter-in-law aren't just in trouble, they're drowning. She turns the screen toward me, showing spreadsheets and documents meticulously organized. Their mortgage has been refinanced 3 times in 4 years. They have a second mortgage they took out last year. Their home equity line of credit is maxed out at $175,000. Credit card debt totaling just over $80,000, spread across 6 cards. I stare at the numbers, trying to process the magnitude. How did it get this bad? James's firm hasn't turned a profit in 22 months. Par cuts in. They've been floating payroll with personal loans. The 3 employees he had left all quit within the last 6 months. He's essentially a one-man operation now, and the office lease is 3 months in arrears. And Jessica's styling business, Par's expression tells me everything before she even speaks. It's a shell. She has the website, the Instagram account, the business cards, but there's almost no income. What little comes in goes immediately out for expenses, mostly clothes, photography, and marketing materials. It's not a business. It's a hobby she's pretending is a career. I think of all the designer outfits, the vacations to Bali and Paris, the private school for Lily, the facade of success they've maintained while their financial foundation crumbled beneath them. What triggered this? They were doing well a few years ago. Par scrolls to another document. 2 major projects James was counting on fell through last year. One client went bankrupt mid-construction. Another pulled out after a zoning dispute. He'd already invested significant resources in both, but even before that, their spending consistently exceeded their income. I remember Jessica's increasingly elaborate birthday gifts for James each year, the champagne tastes that grew as their bank accounts shrank, keeping up appearances at any cost. "What else?" I ask, sensing there's more. Parr hesitates, then opens another file. "This is what concerns me most. 6 months ago, Jessica took out a life insurance policy on you. $500,000. She listed herself as the beneficiary, claiming insurable interest as your caregiver." My caregiver? The absurdity of it would be laughable if it weren't so sinister. I've never needed care a day in my life. The paperwork was handled sloppily. The insurance company assumed James would be the beneficiary since he's your son. They didn't verify Jessica's claims too carefully. Something cold settles in my stomach. She's been planning this for at least 6 months then. Parr nods grimly. And there's one more thing. James has been making regular payments to a doctor named Lionel Avery. He's a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in competency evaluations. The pieces click into place with terrible clarity. They have a backup plan. If the poison failed, they'd have me declared incompetent. Exactly. Dr. Avery has a reputation for being accommodating to families seeking control of elderly relatives' estates. His evaluations tend to find exactly what the paying family member wants them to find. I sit back in my chair, processing everything. They need money desperately. The poison was Plan A. Palmetto Haven and a declaration of incompetence is Plan B. Parr closes her laptop. "There's something else you should know. James has been looking into your company sale, specifically trying to determine exact figures and where the money is being held." Of course he has. $21 million would solve all their problems. "What do you recommend?" I ask. "Document everything. Record conversations if legal in your state. Don't sign anything they give you. And most importantly, don't be alone with either of them." I think of James coming tonight with papers to sign, papers that would give them control over my life, my home, my assets, everything I've built. "I won't be signing anything," I assure her, "and I'll have my own witness present tonight." After Parr leaves, I call Victor again. "I need you here at 6:30. James is coming at 7 with papers for me to sign." "I'll be there," Victor promises. "And Martha, don't eat or drink anything they might have handled." "I've already had that warning today," I say with grim amusement. "Don't worry, I've become very careful about what I consume." At precisely 6:30, Victor arrives carrying his leather briefcase. At 75, he still has the bearing of a man who knows his own worth, his bow tie perfectly centered, his shoes gleaming. We've barely settled in the living room when headlights sweep across the front windows. James early for once. "That's not like him," I murmur. "Eager to secure his prize," Victor responds. But when the doorbell rings, it's not James who stands on my porch. It's Detective Naomi Morgan of the Charleston Police Department, badge in hand. "Mrs. Coleman, I'm Detective Morgan. We spoke on the phone earlier. May I come in?" I invite her inside, introducing Victor as my attorney. Detective Morgan is younger than I expected, perhaps 40, with the careful observation skills of someone who misses nothing. Her gaze sweeps the room, noting details, making connections. "I understand you have information regarding the incident involving Catherine Mills," she asks once we're seated. "Yes," I say. "I believe she was intentionally poisoned, and I believe the poison was actually intended for me." Detective Morgan's expression remains professionally neutral, but her posture shifts slightly forward. "That's a serious allegation, Mrs. Coleman. What evidence do you have?" I explain everything, seeing Jessica with the dropper, the switched glasses, Catherine's collapse. I provide the lab report confirming oleandrin in the champagne and explain the connection to the oleander in my garden. "And you believe your daughter-in-law was responsible?" the detective asks. "I know she was. I saw her do it." "Saw her do. And your son?" I hesitate. I'm not sure how much James knew about the poisoning itself, but he's certainly involved in what comes after. Victor interjects smoothly. "Detective, we also have evidence of significant financial motives. Mrs. Coleman recently sold her company for a substantial sum. Her son and daughter-in-law are in severe financial distress. Furthermore, there's a life insurance policy that was taken out on Mrs. Coleman by her daughter-in-law 6 months ago." Detective Morgan makes notes in a small black notebook. And you mentioned they're pushing you to move into an assisted living facility. Palmetto Haven, I confirm. James is coming here tonight with papers for me to sign, including a power of attorney that would give them control over my finances. The detective checks her watch. What time is he expected? 7 o'clock. She considers for a moment. I'd like to be here when he arrives, Mrs. Coleman. Not visibly, perhaps in another room. I want to hear what he says when he thinks it's just the two of you. Victor raises an eyebrow. You're suggesting a controlled encounter. Exactly. Mrs. Coleman would wear a wire and I would monitor from nearby. If your son incriminates himself or reveals details about the poisoning attempt, that would be valuable evidence. I think of the voice recorder Tilda gave me already tucked into the pocket of my cardigan. I'm willing to do that. Detective Morgan nods. Let's set it up then. We don't have much time. Within 20 minutes, I'm wired with both the police equipment and Tilda's recorder as a backup. Detective Morgan and another officer position themselves in my study, adjacent to the living room, where I'll meet with James. Victor agrees to remain visible as my attorney, his presence explained by the legal documents we're reviewing. At 7 sharp, James arrives. Through the window, I watch him retrieve a leather portfolio from his car, the papers that would seal my fate. He straightens his tie before approaching the door, a businessman preparing for an important negotiation. When I open the door, his smile falters slightly at the sight of Victor seated in the living room. "Mom," he says, kissing my cheek perfunctorily, "I didn't realize you had company." Victor's helping me review some documents related to the company sale, I explain smoothly. Tax implications, you know how it is. Please come in. Would you like some coffee? No thanks. James settles into an armchair, placing the portfolio on the coffee table between us. I see you've been busy. Actually, the papers I've brought relate to financial matters as well. Palmetto Haven requires quite a bit of documentation. Victor leans back, observing quietly. I can almost feel Detective Morgan listening from the next room, recording every word. Jessica mentioned you've found a place for me already, I say. The Magnolia Suite, she said. James brightens. Yes, it's their premier accommodation. South-facing windows, private balcony overlooking the gardens. They only have 12 of these units in the whole facility, and they rarely come available. We had to act quickly to secure it. And the cost was... I let the question hang, watching his reaction. $420,000 for the entrance fee. He confirms, though his eyes flick away when he says the number. But it covers everything, Mom. Housing, meals, activities, medical care if you need it. It's an investment in your future security. My future security. What a lovely way to describe imprisonment. And these papers, I gesture to the portfolio. Just the standard package. He opens it, revealing a stack of documents with yellow tabs marking signature lines. Admission forms, healthcare directives, and yes, the power of attorney we discussed. Palmetto Haven requires it. Their insurance demands that each resident have a designated person who can make decisions if necessary. If necessary, I repeat. And you would be that person. Well, yes. James shifts slightly. Who else? I'm your son. I study him. This man I raised looking for traces of the boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard. The boy who cried when he found a bird with a broken wing and insisted we nurse it back to health. Where did that compassionate child go? When did money become worth more than morality? James, I say carefully, aware of the recording. Before I sign anything, I need to ask you something important. Did you know what Jessica put in my champagne glass at the party? His face goes still, a mask sliding into place. What do you mean? I saw her, James. I saw Jessica put something into my champagne glass, the glass with the chip that everyone knows is mine. His throat works as he swallows. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Jessica didn't... The lab results came back. I interrupt gently. Oleandrin. From the oleander in my garden. A concentrated extract that would have been fatal if I had drunk it. James stands abruptly, color draining from his face. You're confused. That's exactly why we're worried about you. These accusations. This paranoia. Victor speaks for the first time. It's not paranoia when there's scientific evidence, Mr. Coleman. The champagne was tested by an independent laboratory. "This is ridiculous," James sputters. "I'm trying to help my mother to get her into a safe environment where she'll be cared for, and she's accusing my wife of attempted murder." "Not just attempted murder," I say softly. "A calculated plan, the life insurance policy Jessica took out on me 6 months ago. The consultation with Dr. Avery about having me declared incompetent. The convenient opening at Palmetto Haven just as I receive my company sale proceeds. It's all connected, isn't it?" James stares at me, shock giving way to something darker. "You've been investigating us, having us followed. I've been protecting myself," I correct him. "The way you should have protected me as my son." He sinks back into the chair, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Edward that it makes my heart ache despite everything. "You don't understand," he says finally, his voice low. "We're ruined, Mom. The firm is failing. The house is underwater. The credit cards are maxed out. Lily's school is threatening to remove her if the tuition isn't paid. We had nowhere else to turn. So Jessica decided I should die." I ask, my voice steady, despite the pain lancing through me. "And you went along with it." James looks up, something desperate in his eyes. "I didn't know she would go that far. I swear I didn't know about the poison." "But afterward, when Catherine collapsed instead of you, when Jessica told me what happened," he trails off, unable to finish. "You didn't stop her," I finish for him. "You didn't go to the police. Instead, you came here with Plan B. Get me declared incompetent, control my assets, solve your problems with my money one way or another." The silence stretches between us, thick with decades of shared history and the bitter knowledge of betrayal. Finally, James speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mom. I never meant for it to go this far. She pushed. I followed. I kept telling myself you'd be safe, that you'd still be here, and we'd just have the money." I lean forward, my fingers lacing together on my lap. "Do you even hear yourself? You talk about me like I'm a vault with a pulse. Not a mother, not a woman who carried you through nights you don't even remember. Just a resource you could reallocate when convenient." His face twists with shame, and for the first time in decades, he has no argument. "James," I say softly, "love is not a transaction, and greed doesn't disguise itself as protection, not from a son to a mother." He drops his gaze, staring at his hands. "What happens now?" The door to the study opens, and Detective Morgan steps into the room. "Now, Mr. Coleman, we have some questions for you down at the station." James looks up, eyes widening, as he registers the badge on her belt, the uniformed officer behind her. His gaze snaps back to me, understanding dawning. "You were recording this. You set me up." "No, James," I say quietly as the detective approaches. "You set yourself up the moment you chose money over your mother's life." As the officers lead James away, I remain seated, too weary to stand. Victor places a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of solidarity in what should have been my moment of triumph. But there is no triumph in watching your child being led away in handcuffs, only a hollow victory that tastes like ash. "What now?" I ask Victor when we're alone again. "Now," he says gently, "we make sure you're protected. From Jessica, from any further attempts. We build the case and see it through." I nod, looking around at my home, the home Edward and I restored, where we raised James, where I built a life after loss. It remains mine, but at what cost? "Will you stay a while?" I ask Victor. "I don't want to be alone just yet." "Of course," he says, settling back into his chair. "As long as you need." Outside, the patrol car's lights flash silent blue against the gathering darkness. Inside, two old friends sit in the quiet aftermath of betrayal, waiting for the next chapter to begin. It's past midnight when my phone rings, startling me from a dreamless sleep. Victor left hours ago, after we'd fortified ourselves with strong tea and stronger resolve. I fumble for the receiver, expecting perhaps Detective Morgan with an update. "Martha," Jessica's voice tightly controlled but fraying at the edges. "What have you done?" I sit up, fully awake now. "I've protected myself, Jessica. Nothing more." "They've arrested James." Her voice rises slightly. "Arrested him. Do you understand what you've done to our family? To Lily?" The mention of my granddaughter sends a pang through me. Lily, 15 years old, innocent in all of this. What has she been told? What does she know? What I've done? I keep my voice even. Jessica, you tried to poison me with oleander from my own garden. A beat of silence, then a brittle laugh. That's absurd. You have no proof of anything like that. The lab report says otherwise, as does Catherine's testimony about the metallic taste in her champagne. The champagne meant for me. You switched the glasses. The accusation hangs in the air between us, neither question nor statement, but something in between, a recognition. Yes, I admit. I saw you add something to my glass. I wasn't about to drink it. So you let my mother drink it instead. Her voice turns ugly. How noble. I didn't know what you'd put in it, Jessica. I only knew it wasn't meant for good, and I certainly didn't expect it to nearly kill her. Another silence, longer this time. I can hear her breathing, calculating. What do you want? She asks finally. Money, is that it? We'll split it with you. The insurance the company proceeds. There's enough for all of us. I don't want anything from you except distance, I tell her, and perhaps for you to consider what you've done, not just to me, but to your own mother, to Lily. Don't you dare bring my daughter into this. Her voice sharpens. You've done enough damage. Where is she now, Jessica? Does she know her father's been arrested? A hesitation. She's staying with a friend tonight. She doesn't know anything yet. She should come stay with me, I suggest gently, while this is being sorted out. Absolutely not. The words snap like a whip. You've taken my husband. You won't take my daughter, too. I haven't taken anyone, Jessica. James made his choices, as did you. This isn't over, she hisses. You have no idea what you've started. The line goes dead. I replace the receiver slowly, considering the threat implicit in her words. Not over. Of course it isn't. This is only the beginning. I call Detective Morgan's direct line, relieved when she answers despite the hour. Mrs. Coleman, is everything all right? I just received a call from Jessica, I explain. She knows about James's arrest. She sounded unstable. Where are you now? Is your house secure? Yes, all doors locked, but I'm concerned about my granddaughter Lily. Jessica mentioned she's staying with a friend tonight, but I'm worried about what happens next. I'll have a patrol car drive by your house periodically tonight, the detective assures me. As for your granddaughter, we'll make sure social services is aware of the situation. Would you be willing to take temporary custody if necessary? Of course, I say without hesitation. She's my granddaughter. After hanging up, sleep seems impossible. I move through the dark house, checking locks, drawing curtains. In the kitchen, I pause by the window that overlooks the garden. The oleander glows faintly in the moonlight, its white blossoms almost luminous against the shadows. Edward used to say that plants have no morality. They simply are what they are, neither good nor evil. It's humans who assign meaning, who take nature's neutral offerings and bend them toward light or dark. Jessica took the beauty from my garden and distilled it into a weapon. What does that say about her? About the darkness she must carry inside? I remember how she looked on her wedding day, radiant in white, James gazing at her with such hope. I had my doubts even then, something calculated in her smiles, something performative in her affection. But I quieted my concerns. She made James happy, and wasn't that what mattered? Now, 15 years later, I wonder how much of their life together was real, and how much was illusion. Did she ever love him, or was he simply a stepping stone to the life she thought she deserved? And when did love of luxury curdle into willingness to kill? These questions circle like moths around a flame as I wait for dawn, for whatever the new day will bring. One thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again. Jessica's arrest makes the local news by morning. A small item in the crime report section, local woman charged in poisoning attempt. Her mugshot appears online an hour later. Hair-limp makeup, absent the careful facade of perfection, stripped away. I can't bring myself to look at it for more than a moment. Detective Morgan calls with an update. We executed a search warrant at your son's home this morning. Found the oleander extract hidden in a false bottom of Jessica's essential oil cabinet, chemistry equipment in the garage. She'd been manufacturing the poison for months. And James? I ask. still claiming he had no knowledge of the poison itself, but he's admitted to the financial scheme. The district attorney is considering charges of conspiracy and attempted fraud. I close my eyes, feeling the weight of it all. And Lily, my granddaughter. She's with Child Protective Services for now. They'll want to speak with you about temporary placement. By afternoon, I'm sitting in a sterile office at the Department of Social Services, answering questions about my ability to care for a teenager. Yes, I have a spare bedroom. Yes, my home is safe. Yes, I understand the trauma she's experiencing. The social worker, Ms. Patel, regards me with a mix of sympathy and caution. Mrs. Coleman, I have to ask, given the family situation, are you prepared for the emotional challenges Lily may have complicated feelings about what's happened? She's my granddaughter, I say simply. Whatever she feels, however she processes this, I'll be there for her. Her mother is being held without bail, Ms. Patel continues. Her father will likely face charges as well. This is a lot for a 15-year-old to handle. I know, but she shouldn't have to handle it alone. 2 hours later, Lily enters the room, a duffel bag clutched in her hands. Tall like her father, with my dark eyes and stubborn chin. She looks at me with an expression I can't quite read. Not anger, not relief, something in between. "Grandma," she says, voice flat. "Lily." I stand, but don't move toward her, giving her the space she needs. "I'm so sorry about all of this." She shrugs, emotion so teenage in its affected nonchalance that it nearly breaks my heart. "They said Mom tried to kill you, and Dad knew about it." The bluntness of her statement catches me off guard. Yes, that's what happened. Why? The simplicity of the question belies its impossible depth. Money. I tell her because she deserves the truth. They were in financial trouble. They saw my company sale as a solution. Lily nods slowly. Dad's been weird about money for a while. Mom keeps buying stuff, but then the credit cards get declined. I heard them fighting about it. She drops her bag and looks at me directly. "I want you to know I didn't know anything about this. I wouldn't have let them hurt you." The fierceness in her voice reminds me so much of myself at her age that tears spring to my eyes. "I know that, Lily. I never thought otherwise. Can we go home now?" she asks suddenly, sounding very young. "Not their house, your house." "Yes," I say, gathering her bag. "Let's go home." In the car, Lily stares out the window, watching the familiar streets of Charleston pass by. "They told me I might have to testify against Mom and Dad." I grip the steering wheel tighter. "Only if you know something relevant to the case." "I might," she admits quietly. "I found some weird stuff in Mom's essential oil cabinet a few months ago. Bottles that didn't have labels, equipment I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she got really angry, said it was for a special project and to stay out of her things." My breath catches. "Did you tell the police this?" She nods. "The detective lady. She said it was important." Another piece of evidence against Jessica, another nail in the coffin of her defense, and my granddaughter forced into the role of witness against her own mother. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Lily." She turns to look at me, eyes suddenly fierce. "I'm not in the middle. I'm on your side. What they tried to do, it's wrong, evil." Her certainty is both heartbreaking and fortifying. At 15, she sees the moral clarity that her parents lost sight of. "Thank you," I say simply. "That means more than you know." As we pull into my driveway, Lily looks up at the house, the place where just days ago her mother tried to end my life. "Will the oleander still be there, in the garden?" I pause, key in the ignition. "Yes. Does that bother you?" She considers for a moment. "No, it's just a plant. It didn't choose to be poison." Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom that adults often miss. I smile at her, this remarkable young woman who shares my blood, my stubbornness, my clear-eyed view of the world. No, it didn't. It's what people choose to do with it that matters. We walk together up the porch steps into a house that will now shelter 3 generations of Coleman women, one fallen, one rising, and me in the middle, holding the space between past and future, between justice and mercy, between what was lost and what might still be saved. The courtroom is smaller than I expected, oak panels absorbing sound like a confession booth. I sit in the front row, back straight, hands folded in my lap. Beside me, Victor adjusts his bow tie, a nervous habit from 50 years of litigation. Today marks the first preliminary hearing in the case against Jessica. "Are you prepared for this?" Victor asks quietly. I nod, though preparation seems an inadequate word for witnessing your daughter-in-law's arraignment on charges of attempted murder. "Remember," Victor cautions, "she'll likely plead not guilty. Don't react no matter what her attorney claims." "I understand theater when I see it," I reply. The side door opens, and Jessica enters, escorted by a female deputy. Her orange jumpsuit transforms her from fashion plate to inmate, the harsh fluorescence revealing dark circles under her eyes that no concealer can hide. She scans the courtroom until her gaze lands on me. For a moment, naked hatred flashes across her face before her attorney whispers something that makes her compose herself. Behind me, the courtroom door opens. I turn to see Catherine Mills enter, slowly leaning on a cane. Our eyes meet, and I see the same mixture of grief and determination that I've felt these past 2 weeks. What does it do to a mother to know her daughter tried to commit murder? What words exist for that kind of betrayal? Catherine takes the seat beside me, her hand briefly touching mine, a gesture of solidarity between two women whose lives have been shattered by the same person. "How are you holding up?" I whisper. "One day at a time," she answers, eyes fixed on her daughter at the defendant's table. "And Lily, adjusting. She's stronger than any of us realized." The judge enters, and we rise. The formalities begin, case numbers, charges read aloud, rights explained. Jessica is charged with attempted first-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder and elder exploitation. The prosecutor, a woman with steel-gray hair and precise movements, presents the evidence collected so far, the oleandrin in the champagne, the extraction equipment found in Jessica's home, the life insurance policy. When asked for her plea, Jessica's voice rings clear, not guilty. Her attorney immediately moves for bail, citing Jessica's ties to the community and her daughter's needs. The prosecutor counters with the evidence of premeditation and the potential flight risk, given the severity of the charges. Your Honor, the defendant methodically planned to poison her mother-in-law for financial gain. When that attempt accidentally poisoned her own mother instead, she proceeded with an alternate plan to have Mrs. Coleman declared incompetent and institutionalized. This shows not only criminal intent, but a disturbing willingness to continue pursuing her goal despite nearly killing a family member. The judge denies bail, citing the extraordinary planning and callousness evident in the case. Jessica's shoulders stiffen, but she shows no other reaction. As the deputies lead her out, she turns once more to look at me. In that glance is a promise. This isn't over. Outside the courthouse, reporters cluster on the steps. Catherine and I exit through a side door, avoiding the cameras and questions. Detective Morgan meets us at the car. "Mrs. Coleman, Mrs. Mills, I wanted to update you. We've uncovered some additional evidence you should know about." We follow her to a quiet corner of the parking garage. "We found a journal in a hidden compartment of Jessica's closet," Morgan explains. "It details her plans going back almost 8 months. There are chemical formulas, notes on oleander toxicity, even calculations of how much money she stood to gain from your death." I absorb this, the cold calculation of it all. "And James, did the journal mention him?" "Not explicitly. She refers to Jay several times, saying he doesn't have the stomach for what needs to be done, but will benefit from the results." Catherine leans heavily on her cane. "My daughter planned this for 8 months. "I'm afraid so, ma'am. The journal also contained information about other potential targets." My head snaps up. "What other targets?" Detective Morgan's expression darkens. "There were notes about your granddaughter Lily, specifically about how Lily might complicate inheritance matters if Mrs. Coleman died. There were calculations about life insurance policies for Lily as well." A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the garage's temperature. She was considering harming Lily. "We don't have proof of intent, but the notes are concerning enough that we've added them to the case file. I wanted you both to know, especially since Mrs. Coleman now has custody of Lily." Catherine sways slightly, and I grip her arm to steady her. "My own daughter," she whispers. "How could she become this person without me seeing it?" I have no answer for her. The same question has haunted me about James. How do we miss the darkness growing in those we love until it's too late? Thank you for telling us, I say to Morgan. I'll take extra precautions with Lily's safety. We've increased patrols near your home, the detective assures me. And Mrs. Coleman, there's something else. James has agreed to testify against Jessica in exchange for a reduced sentence. This news hits me like a physical blow. James turning on his wife. The final fracture in a family already broken beyond repair. When is all I can ask. He'll make a formal statement tomorrow. The DA thinks his testimony combined with the physical evidence and the journal will make for an airtight case against Jessica. As we drive away from the courthouse, Catherine stares silently out the window. I wonder what she sees in the passing Charleston streets, the daughter she raised, the warning signs she missed, the future now irreparably altered. Will you come back to the house? I ask her. Lily would love to see you. She nods slowly. Yes, we survivors should stick together. Survivors. The word settles around my shoulders like an unexpected weight. Is that what we are now? Women who outlived the murder attempts of those we loved. It seems an identity too heavy to carry. When we arrive home, Lily is sitting on the porch swing, a book open on her lap. She stands when she sees Catherine, uncertainty in her posture. What do you say to your grandmother when your mother tried to kill your other grandmother? What protocol exists for such a tangled web of betrayal? But Catherine opens her arms without hesitation, and Lily falls into them. They hold each other, the innocent and the collateral damage bound by loss and love in equal measure. Inside, I make tea while they talk quietly in the living room. The house feels different with Lily in it, livelier, yet somehow more fragile. Her presence reminds me of what's at stake, why I must see this through to the end. The kettle whistles and I arrange cookies on a plate, the ordinary rituals that keep us tethered to normalcy when everything else has come unmoored. As I carry the tray to the living room, my phone rings. The caller ID shows James's attorney. Hello. Mrs. Coleman, this is Lawrence Bennett. I represent your son. He's asked me to inform you that he'll be making a full statement to the district attorney tomorrow, detailing Jessica's plans and his own involvement. I've been told, I say, keeping my voice neutral. There's more. James specifically asked me to tell you that he wants to speak with you before he gives his statement. He says there are things you need to know that aren't in the official record. I consider this request weighing the pain of facing my son against the need for truth. When, this evening if possible, at the detention center, I can arrange a private meeting room. I look at Lily and Catherine, heads bent together over a photo album. They are picking up the pieces of their shattered family mosaic, trying to salvage what remains. Tell him I'll be there at 7. The detention center smells of industrial cleaner and despair. I follow a guard through a series of locked doors, each closing behind me with a finality that tightens my chest. The meeting room contains nothing but a metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. I sit facing the door, hands folded in my lap, the posture of patience I perfected through decades of board meetings and difficult parent-teacher conferences. When James enters, flanked by a guard, I almost don't recognize him. 2 weeks in detention have hollowed his cheeks and shadowed his eyes. The confident architect has been replaced by a man whose blueprint for life has been erased and redrawn as a prison cell. Mom, he says, voice cracking slightly. Thank you for coming. I nod, not trusting myself to speak just yet. The guard leaves us alone, but watches through a window in the door. James sits across from me, his hands fidgeting on the table. How's Lily? He asks. Coping. She's resilient like her grandmother. A ghost of a smile touches his lips. She always did take after you more than Jessica or me. Why did you want to see me, James? I ask, cutting through the small talk. What couldn't wait until your official statement? He looks down at his hands, now still. I needed you to hear it from me first, about how it all started, about what I did and didn't know. I'm listening. He takes a deep breath. It began last year when the Harrington project fell through. I'd invested everything in that development materials, labor, even borrowed against the house. When the zoning board rejected the final plans, I lost over $300,000 overnight. I remember the Harrington Project, an ambitious, mixed-use development that James had talked about for months. I'd offered to help financially, but he'd refused, insisting he could handle it himself. Jessica was furious, he continues. Not just about the money, but what it meant for our lifestyle. She'd gotten used to certain things: the country club membership, Lily's private school, the vacations. She couldn't accept scaling back. So instead of adjusting your spending, you looked for a quick solution. I supply. He nods, shame coloring his face. We started arguing about money constantly. Jessica would suggest asking you for help, and I'd refuse. My pride. He trails off. One night, after a particularly bad fight, she mentioned how much you'd probably get for the company when you sold it. She said it was just sitting there while we were drowning in debt. And that's when the plan began. Not exactly. At first it was just talk. Wouldn't it be nice if kind of conversations? But after you announced the sale negotiations last fall, the talk became more serious. Jessica started researching assisted living facilities, looking into power of attorney requirements. And the poison? I ask the question I need answered most. When did that enter the picture? James's face contorts. I swear to you, Mom, I didn't know about that until after Catherine collapsed. Jessica had been taking night classes in herbalism and natural remedies. I thought it was just another of her phases, like the jewelry making or the interior design certificate. But you didn't go to the police when you found out, I point out. Instead, you accelerated the Palmetto Haven plan. He can't meet my eyes. I was in shock. When Jessica told me what she'd done, what had gone wrong, I couldn't process it. She convinced me it was an accident, that Catherine would recover, that no one would connect it to us. And you believed that, or wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe it, he admits. But deep down, I knew. When Jessica started pushing harder about Palmetto Haven, about getting you to sign the power of attorney, I knew what she was capable of. But by then, I was complicit. If I turned her in, I'd be turning myself in too. I study my son trying to reconcile the man before me with the child I raised. What changed? Why testify against her now? His eyes meet mine finally. Detective Morgan showed me Jessica's journal. The parts about Lily. His voice breaks. My own daughter. Jessica was calculating how to remove her from the inheritance picture if necessary. My wife was considering harming our child Mom. That's when I knew there was no bottom to this pit. Tears slide down his face unchecked. I failed everyone. You, Lily, even Jessica. I should have been stronger, should have stopped this before it started. I want to reach across and take his hand to comfort him, as I did when he was small, but the weight of his choices holds me back. Yes, you should have. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. More sorry than I can ever express. Your sorrow doesn't undo the harm, James. No, he agrees quietly. It doesn't. We sit in silence for a moment, the wreckage of our family stretching between us like a chasm. There's something else you should know, he says eventually. Something that's not in Jessica's journal or my statement to the DA. I wait, steeling myself for whatever new revelation comes next. Jessica has a contact on the outside, someone who's been helping her even now that she's in custody. A friend from her styling business, Meredith Gaines. They've known each other since college. What kind of help? I don't know exactly, but Jessica called Meredith from jail several times before her phone privileges were restricted, and Meredith visited twice last week. I recall the name, a thin, blonde woman who occasionally appeared in Jessica's social media posts. Why are you telling me this? Because Jessica doesn't accept defeat, Mom. Ever. And she has resources we don't know about, accounts I never had access to, connections I wasn't allowed to question. I'm afraid of what she might do, even from inside. The warning settles cold in my stomach. I'll tell Detective Morgan. James nods, then hesitates. There's one more thing, about Lily's inheritance from you. Jessica set up a trust a few years ago that gives her control over anything Lily inherits until she's 25. If Jessica is convicted, but gets out eventually, she could still access that money. I'll speak with Victor about changing my will, I assure him. A guard appears at the door, signaling our time is ending. James stands looking down at me with eyes that carry the weight of all he's lost. Take care of Lily. Make sure she knows. He struggles for words. Make sure she knows that once before all this, her father was a good man who loved her very much. As I walk away, his words echo in my mind. Once before all this, as if goodness is something that can be located in time, something that existed before being replaced by its opposite. But that's not how morality works. We don't suddenly become different people. We make small compromises one after another until we find ourselves unrecognizable even to ourselves. Outside, the warm Charleston night wraps around me like a familiar blanket. I sit in my car for a long moment before starting the engine, trying to process everything James has told me. The warning about Meredith Gaines, the trust that could give Jessica access to Lily's inheritance, the remorse that comes too late to prevent the damage already done. I call Detective Morgan from the parking lot, relaying James's concerns about Jessica's outside contact. She promises to look into Meredith Gaines immediately. We'll check her visitor's log and phone records, Morgan assures me. And Mrs. Coleman, you might consider additional security measures at your home just as a precaution. I will. I promise, though, the thought of turning my home into a fortress feels like another small victory for Jessica, another way she's forced us to change our lives to accommodate her malice. When I arrive home, the house is quiet. Catherine has gone back to her own place, and Lily is asleep in the guest room that has become hers. I move through the rooms, checking locks, drawing curtains. In the kitchen, I pour a small glass of sherry, a habit Edward and I used to share after difficult days. Through the window, I can see the oleander glowing ghost white in the moonlight, its beauty unchanged by the knowledge of its danger. I think of Jessica, of how her external beauty masked the poison within, of how we often mistake loveliness for goodness, as if the two must naturally coexist. I sip the sherry and consider what comes next: the trial, the testimony, the slow, painful process of rebuilding what can be salvaged from the wreckage of betrayal, and through it all protecting Lily, the innocent inheritor of our family's tangled legacy. The next morning brings a flurry of activity. Detective Morgan calls early to inform me they've placed Meredith Gaines under surveillance. Victor arrives with papers to revise my will and Lily's trust arrangements. Tilda stops by with homemade bread and practical suggestions for home security. Get the locks changed today, she advises, cutting thick slices of sourdough. And consider a simple alarm system. Nothing fancy, just enough to alert you if someone tries to get in while you're sleeping. You think Jessica could arrange something from jail? I ask. I think a woman who planned for 8 months to poison her mother-in-law isn't going to let steel bars stop her, Tilda replies bluntly, especially when money's involved. Victor agrees, his bow tie slightly askew in his agitation. Martha, I've seen cases where defendants manage remarkable feats from behind bars. We need to assume Jessica still has resources and motivation. By noon, a locksmith is changing every lock in the house, and a security company is installing a basic alarm system. I feel a strange mix of vulnerability and resolve, like a turtle creating a harder shell after a predator's attack. Lily returns from school, subdued, her backpack hanging from one shoulder. Everyone was talking about it, she says as soon as she walks in. The arrest Dad's deal with the prosecutor. Someone's mom showed them an article online. I guide her to the kitchen where Tilda's bread and a pot of soup await. I'm sorry, Lily. News travels fast in Charleston. Alyssa Peters said her mom told her that my mom is a gold digger who got caught. What does that even mean? I choose my words carefully. It means people simplify complicated situations to make them easier to talk about. Your mother's actions were wrong, but human motivation is rarely simple enough for a single label. Lily picks at her soup. Dad's really going to testify against Mom? Yes. He's made a deal with the district attorney. Will I have to testify too? Her voice is small, her eyes fixed on the table. Only if you know something specific that the investigators need. Would that be difficult for you? She considers the question with a maturity that makes my heart ache. I think it would be hard to sit in the same room with Mom now that I know what she tried to do. To you, to Grandma Catherine, maybe even to me. The last words hang in the air between us. So she knows about the journal, about Jessica's calculations regarding her own daughter. Perhaps the investigators told her, or perhaps teenagers are simply better at finding information than adults realize. You won't have to face this alone, Lily. Whatever happens, I'm here. She nods, then asks the question I've been dreading. Will you ever forgive Dad? I take her hand across the table. Forgiveness isn't a single decision, Lily. It's a process that takes time. I'm still figuring out how to understand what happened, much less forgive it. But do you think you will eventually? I see the hope in her eyes, the child's wish for her broken family to somehow mend. I don't know, but I do know that whatever happens between your father and me, it doesn't change how either of us feels about you. You aren't responsible for fixing what the adults in your life have broken. She seems to accept this, at least for now. After lunch, she retreats to her room to tackle homework, the mundane rituals of adolescence continuing despite everything. I'm reviewing security system instructions when my phone rings with an unfamiliar number. Martha Coleman speaking. Mrs. Coleman. A woman's voice, crisp and unfamiliar. This is Meredith Gaines, Jessica's friend. My hand tightens on the phone. How did you get this number? That hardly matters. What matters is that we need to talk. About what exactly? About Jessica, of course, and about what it would take to make this situation go away. I choose my words with care, aware that this conversation could be important later. I'm not sure what you mean by go away. Jessica has been charged with attempted murder. That's not something that simply disappears. Everything has a price, Mrs. Coleman, Meredith says smoothly. Even justice. Are you attempting to bribe me, Ms. Gaines? A light laugh. Bribe is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as finding a mutually beneficial resolution. Jessica is willing to relinquish any claim to your estate or Lily's future inheritance in exchange for you dropping the charges. The state is prosecuting Jessica, not me. I couldn't drop the charges if I wanted to. But you could recant your testimony. Tell the police you were mistaken about what you saw, that the stress of Catherine's collapse confused you. The audacity is breathtaking. Why would I do that when I know exactly what I saw? Because Jessica has information that could make life very uncomfortable for you and your granddaughter. Things about James that haven't come to light yet. Things Lily shouldn't have to hear about her father in open court. A threat thinly veiled. Is Jessica blackmailing me now, Ms. Gaines? That seems unwise given her current legal situation. Not blackmail, just a reminder that trials can be messy for everyone involved. No one emerges with clean hands. I think of Detective Morgan, of the surveillance likely already in place on Meredith Gaines. I'm not interested in any arrangement with Jessica, and I suggest you reconsider acting as her messenger. Interfering with a witness in an attempted murder case carries serious penalties. Think about it, Meredith says, ignoring my warning. I'll call again tomorrow for your answer. The line goes dead. I immediately dial Detective Morgan, relaying the conversation in detail. This is excellent, she says, surprising me. We recorded the call on our end. Witness tampering, obstruction of justice. We can add these charges to Jessica's case and arrest Meredith Gaines today. She mentioned things about James that would hurt Lily if revealed in court. What could that mean? Morgan's hesitation is brief but noticeable. It might be nothing, just leverage, but we'll talk to James, see if there's anything he hasn't disclosed yet. After we hang up, I sit in the gathering darkness of my study, thinking about Meredith's call, about Jessica's continued machinations from behind bars, about what secrets might still be hidden in the wreckage of my family. The doorbell rings, startling me from my thoughts. Through the new security camera, Victor insisted on I see Catherine on my porch leaning on her cane. I hope I'm not intruding, she says when I open the door. I couldn't face my empty house tonight. You're always welcome here, I tell her, meaning it. In these strange days, Catherine has become an unexpected ally, perhaps even a friend. Over tea, I tell her about James's confession about Meredith's call, about the escalating precautions we're taking. Catherine listens, her hands wrapped around her teacup as if drawing warmth from it. She won't stop, Catherine says quietly when I finish. Jessica has never accepted defeat in anything, not even as a child. What was she like? Growing up. Catherine considers the question, looking into her tea as if it might hold answers. Beautiful, clever, and always calculating. Even her affection seemed measured, given only when it served a purpose. Did you see signs of this, I gesture vaguely, unable to find words for the magnitude of Jessica's betrayal. Not this specifically, but there were moments. She trails off, then continues with evident pain. When Jessica was 16, her boyfriend broke up with her for another girl. 2 weeks later, the girl was hospitalized with a mysterious allergic reaction. Nothing was ever proven, but Jessica had been working in a chemistry lab that semester. A chill runs through me. You think she poisoned the girl? I don't know. I told myself it was coincidence, that I was being paranoid. But now... Catherine sets down her cup, hands trembling slightly. Now I wonder how much damage I allowed by looking away. We sit in silence, two mothers reckoning with the children we raised, the warnings we ignored, the consequences we never imagined. What happens now? Catherine asks eventually. Now we protect ourselves and Lily. We cooperate with the prosecution. We rebuild what we can. She nods slowly. And Jessica. I think of my daughter-in-law in her prison jumpsuit, of the hatred in her eyes when she looked at me across the courtroom, of the poison she cultivated both in my garden and in her heart. Jessica faces the consequences of her choices, as we all must. The grandfather clock in the hall strikes 9, its familiar chime, a reminder that time continues its steady march, carrying us forward through grief and betrayal, toward whatever uncertain future awaits. Stay tonight, I offer Catherine. The guest room is made up. She accepts with evident relief, and I show her upstairs. As I turn to leave, she catches my hand. Martha, thank you, for not hating me because of what she did. We're not our children's keepers, Catherine, not after they're grown. Jessica made her choices. They weren't yours. Sometimes I think they must have been somehow, that I failed her in some fundamental way. I shake my head. We give our children roots and wings. We can't control which direction they fly. Later, as I check the new security system one last time before bed, I pause at the window overlooking the garden. The oleander glows in the moonlight, beautiful and deadly. Tomorrow, I decide I will dig it up. Not because it tried to kill me, the plant itself is blameless, but because some reminders are too painful to keep. In its place, I'll plant something new, something for Lily perhaps, a legacy of growth rather than destruction, a sign that even from poisoned ground, new life can emerge. The Morrow Coleman Foundation for Elder Protection launches 6 months after Jessica's conviction. Named for Edward and Catherine's maiden name, it operates from a modest office in downtown Charleston, 2 blocks from Victor's law firm. Catherine, to everyone's surprise, finds her calling as our public speaker. People listen when I tell Jessica's story, she explains. They think, if it happened to her daughter, it could happen in any family. Lily thrives despite everything. She completes her junior year with remarkable resilience and wins a scholarship to Northwestern's pre-law program. I want to specialize in elder law, she tells me, as we tend the memorial garden we've planted where the oleander once grew. James serves his 3-year sentence teaching GED classes to fellow inmates. Lily visits him monthly, their relationship complicated but healing. Do you think people can change, Grandma? She asks after one visit. Yes, I answer carefully, but not easily and not without cost. Change requires facing truths about ourselves we'd rather avoid. In February, Detective Morgan calls with news. Jessica attempted suicide in prison. She's alive, but she left a note mentioning Lily. The note read, "Tell Lily I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. The darkness was always there even before she was born. It wasn't her fault." Spring arrives with a flourish of azaleas and camellias. Our garden blooms with Edward's roses and native flowering plants where poison once grew. Lily announces her name change. I'd like to be Lily Coleman Morrow, for you and Grandpa. And for Grandma Catherine, too. At the Foundation's first annual conference, Catherine and I stand together at the podium. Welcome, I begin. My name is Martha Coleman and this is Catherine Morrow. Our story begins with a poisoned glass of champagne, but it doesn't end there. Later that evening, Lily, Catherine, and I sit on my porch watching fireflies rise from the garden. I never thought I'd find family again, Catherine says softly. Family isn't always blood. I reply, thinking of Tilda Victor Beverly allies who became kin through crisis. Sometimes it's who stands beside you when the world falls apart. Lily leans against my shoulder. And sometimes it's who helps you rebuild. I pour 3 glasses of lemonade and raise mine in the gathering darkness. To what breaks us and to what we build from the pieces. In the distance, Charleston's church bells toll the hour. The night is kind. We have survived. We are rebuilding. We are finding our way forward one careful step at a time through a garden where poison once grew but roses now bloom.